Hi everyone, it's Chris again. This week I'm a very lucky boy. I've taken a lens of a very expensive and interesting camera lens, which I'm going to review today. It's the Sigma 50 to 500mm, or I should hold it this way, camera lens. Here we go. You have no idea how much this thing weighs. About 2 kilos. 50 to 500mm, there you go. I've got it mounted on a Canon 500D camera. And a word I would struggle to use for this particular combination is proportionate. As you can see, this lens is slightly larger than normal. In fact, it's picked up a rather special nickname, Bigma. Okay, now this is the first time I've actually used a Sigma lens. It's the first time I've put a Sigma lens on my camera. And what a Sigma lens to start with. It's absolutely amazing. 50 to 500mm gives an obvious 10 times zoom range. 500mm, seriously telescopic. You're going to be shooting things that are very far away at that sort of focal length. Now, some people might think to themselves, wow, 50 to 500mm, that sounds really convenient. I can get that to go with my kit lens. Maybe I could pop it in my camera bag and go snowboarding with it. Well, the answer to that question is no. This is clearly a pretty specialized lens. As you can see, I'm holding it by the tripod mount, because if I held it by the camera, that would be extremely stupid and it would break. It weighs a ton, and it's a very specialized lens for more advanced users. This lens is not for the faint-hearted. At full zoom, the lens is very long and weighs nearly 2 kilos. It's possible to hand-hold this lens if you really need to, although only a moron would pick it up by the camera. The lens feels like a very high-quality piece of equipment. It's made of metal, so it's not going to break anytime soon. In fact, it would probably make quite a handy weapon. You will definitely want a huge, multi-coated UV filter to protect the vast front element, so be ready to invest even further for that. You're also very likely to be using this lens outside where there's enough light, so a polarizing filter would also be very useful, and would also be very expensive. The zoom action is very smooth and fairly even, with markings on the barrel to show you close focus magnification. The autofocus dial is also very smooth, well damped, and turns a long way for precise focusing, which is great news. The lens uses Sigma's ultrasonic HSM autofocusing. Autofocus is fast, accurate, and silent. However, it makes clicking noises when changing direction during microfocusing. Basically, everything about this lens's build quality is fantastic. It's a real pleasure just to play with it. This version of the lens does not have image stabilization, although Sigma have since released a version with IS, or OS, as they call it. However, this is a lens which you really need a tripod mount for anyway, and the image stabilized version is even heavier and more expensive. Image stabilization is always good, but because it really is a tripod lens, you should ask yourself if the image stabilized version is really worth the extra money. Although, even on a tripod, image stabilization can be useful. At 500mm, there's a lot of shake, even just caused by the wind. These pictures are taken from the top of an ice building, a very appropriate place to test out this telescope of a lens. Here's a shot taken with my 10mm lens, now 50mm with a Sigma, 200mm, and 500mm. That's a zoom range in my kit bag of 50 times, which is pretty fun. The Sigma lens itself is attached to the tripod, which makes things easy, although with this amount of light I could handhold. In these videos, you can see the lens's impressive and unique zoom range. It's cool to think that with these lenses in my kit, I could have a zoom range of 50 times available for my camera. As you can see, there's a lot of shakiness at 500mm, which is not really surprising. Also, this is not a fast lens. At this range, the maximum aperture is only f6.3, which means only a little light can come through. This means you need slower shutter speeds to properly light your shots, which means possibly blurry images or a high ISO on your camera. Even with a tripod, getting telephoto shots at night or indoors with this lens would be extremely tricky. But then, there aren't any kind of fast alternatives to this lens at this focal length, and, if there are, for example the ones by Canon, they cost as much as a luxury car. When it comes to image quality, prepare to be a little surprised. When I heard the numbers 50 to 500 connected with the words zoom range, I was ready to be very skeptical about image quality. However, throughout the zoom range, this lens is reasonably sharp wide open, and even better when you stop down the aperture a little. At 500mm, this lens's sweet spot seems to be f11, as you can see from the detail in these shots. Towards 500mm, there are optical problems like softness and very low contrast. But it's still quite usable, beating Sigma's other similar lenses at these focal ranges. Chromatic aberration is present, but not a serious problem at any point. Basically, there's nothing around at all like this lens. It's not exactly practical. Using this for your everyday walk-around photography, trying to hang it around your neck, would be a bit like bringing a cannon to a pistol fight. You're quite limited on your flexibility, however, you get rather impressive range with it. Now, this would be a truly fantastic lens for nature lovers or anyone on safari. It would also be very good for people who like to shoot sports games outdoors in good light. And also it's quite handy for the occasional obligatory moon video or moon photography. However, I probably wouldn't look through this lens and point it at the sun. Now, if you do have a lot of spare money, I wouldn't recommend picking up this lens just for fun because of the amazing zoom range. It's a serious piece of kit for people with a nice tripod to use and people with a serious purpose to their photography, hopefully professionals, or for anyone who just likes to spy on their neighbours. Frankly, that doesn't really include me, so I'm going to give it back to my friend now. Okay, see you next time.